You are listening to the So Now What podcast with Lana Manikowski, episode number 205. So now what? These three words raced through my mind time and time again during my journey through fertility treatments. I tried desperately to have a child, but never was able. I yearned for a community to join that could understand my struggles. I couldn't find one, so I created one with the So Now What podcast. I love that you found us. Hi, friend. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. But before we dive into episode 205, I want to share something important with you. This is a study that Northwestern University is doing. It's a needs assessment of women who remain childless following infertility treatment. And it's happening through the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology in their division of reproductive endocrinology and infertility. The goal of the study is to better understand the experiences and the support needs of women whose fertility treatment ended without a live birth. And if you are listening and that sounds like something you might relate to, you have to meet some specific eligibility requirements. Basically, 18 years or older, that you were biologically female at birth, you previously underwent some sort of fertility treatment, for example, fertility medications, an IUI or IVF, and that you did not have a live birth as a result of that treatment. So if you'd like to participate, there is going to be a confidential survey link that I am putting in the show notes, or if you follow me on social media, you can find it in my bio on social media. If you feel like you would like to share your experiences about what you were or were not offered at the end of your fertility treatments and help researchers get some teeth around what is needed and what has been or not been offered. All right, so let's get into episode 205 because honestly, I have not stopped thinking about last weekend, and maybe not for the reasons you'd expect. Of course, yes, Mother's Day weekend was beautiful. Yes, it was emotional. It was absolutely incredible watching women from 13 different states come to Chicago for the Mother's Day celebration. But what I keep thinking about most is the woman listening to this episode right now who spent Mother's Day weekend feeling completely alone. Maybe that was you. Maybe you stayed off social media. Maybe you kept yourself busy on purpose. Maybe you went to events or a brunch with family or some sort of gathering and smiled through it while inside feeling totally disconnected the entire time. And you probably looked around and thought, how is everybody else moving through this weekend so frickin' normally? And meanwhile, you're just like, okay, let's fast forward. Let's get to Monday. If that was you, I want you to know something. The women who came to Chicago for the Mother's Day weekend are not different than you. Many of them almost did not come. They worried that they might not belong, that they'd feel awkward. They worried that people there already knew each other, that they were going to be an outsider, and that they would somehow just not fit in, even though it was a group of women who didn't have kids. But what was so incredible to witness was how quickly all of that disappeared. And within minutes and hours, women who had never met before were making plans together. They got up Saturday morning and did some sightseeing together, visited a coffee shop. Some of them Friday night went back after the foundation event and got drinks together, made dinner plans. It was just beautiful to see women laughing and connecting like they were old friends. And I just kept thinking, this is what happens when women stop believing that they are the only one. Because I know how easy it is after infertility diagnosis or after fertility treatments end to start seeing yourself differently. And that's what happens, because we're not just grieving motherhood, but oftentimes questioning, where do you fit in now? And I remember there was a long period of time after treatments ended for me where weekends like Mother's Day felt so loaded. Not because I hated Mother's Day, not because I didn't think moms are worth celebrating, but because it felt like everybody else had somewhere obvious that they belonged. And I just did not know where I fit anymore. And I think that's why so many women are navigating fertility treatments and trying to understand, where do you end up when the baby does not come? And it's not just grief, but it's this question underneath everything of questioning, who am I now? Because nobody really prepares you for this part. That's not part of the big conversation. There's so much focus on getting pregnant, which I get. Like, that's why we did all we did. The retrievals, the transfers, the injections, medications, the waiting, the heartbreak, but very little conversation about what happens when treatments end and you have these decades of life ahead of you to try to figure out how to navigate. Nobody talks about the way friendships start to feel different. Nobody talks about sitting at dinner while every conversation with family and friends revolves around parenting and wondering, like, where do I contribute? Nobody talks about how easy it becomes to just pull yourself away socially, because in your mind, it's just so much easier to not engage than navigate all these emotions that feel really unsettling. And I think over time, a lot of women start believing that they are the problem, that it's something wrong with you. Like, you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, you're not handling this well enough, you're not over it quick enough. But after Mother's Day weekend, I just want to say clearly, I do not think you feel disconnected because something is wrong with you. I think you may have spent years in spaces where your experience and your lived reality was never reflected back to you. And that, I believe, is very different. And honestly, I think that's part of what made the Mother's Day weekend feel so emotional for so many women, because nobody had to explain why Mother's Day weekend feels complicated. No one had to pretend that they were fine. Nobody had to feel like they had to shrink themselves or edit their stories. There was this instant understanding that allowed everyone to just relax and be themselves. And I want to be careful to say something that I think is really important here too, that the magic of the Mother's Day weekend wasn't that women finally found the only place that they belong. You already belong in this world, and you belong in your friendships, even in your friendships with your mom friends. I truly believe that. You have a place of belonging in your marriage, in conversations and celebrations around things that you don't have. You belong in joy. You belong in happy experiences. And motherhood did not determine your worthiness to take up space in your life. Think about that. Your worth is not only contingent upon you being a mother. That I will go to my grave saying, because there is something that creates such a huge awareness when you realize that deciding to belong is up to you. And there is something incredibly healing about spending Mother's Day weekend around women who understand this part of your story, of course, without needing an explanation. And especially when you've spent years feeling like you are the odd one out. And I think what became so powerful on Mother's Day weekend was watching women stop seeing themselves as this separate entity, as this exception. I watched women walk into rooms feeling nervous and guarded, because even though they knew it was a room where other childless women were, they didn't know people. There is just this like nervous wall that we have up. And by the end of our celebrations for Mother's Day, it was beautiful to see women just visibly relaxed, confident, connected, smiling. Not because grief all of a sudden like disappeared on a weekend, because they remembered, you know what? I'm not broken. I'm not the only one. I belong here. And honestly, one of the most emotional parts of the weekend for me was meeting so many of my beautiful clients in my coaching practice in person. Some of these women I have coached for months, some for years. I've known their stories. I've known the moments when they thought they'd never feel okay again. I've seen the tears, and I know the marriages that they were looking to reconnect inside of, and how hard it felt for some of them to imagine a future without children and how to ever feel meaningful without kids. And I know the friendships they worried would never feel normal again. And then all of a sudden, meeting them in person and getting to hug them in person just felt so good, because I got to watch women who once felt so disconnected walk confidently into rooms, introduce themselves to people, make other people feel welcomed and comforted, laughing, making plans, staying up late and chatting in hotel lobbies. That was emotional for me, because I know who some of these women were when we just started working together. And I think that's also why this weekend feels so different, because the women there weren't connecting because they had identical stories or their path to childlessness was exactly the same. They connected because they stopped believing that they had to hide parts of themselves that felt different. And that's really why the work I do with my clients, I feel makes such a huge impact, because I help them see that you already belong. Not someday when infertility hurts less, or not having kids just magically, feels okay to you. Not once you move on, or when life looks perfect to you, because spoiler alert, that might not ever happen. But now, as you are. And I absolutely love that coaching allows me to work with women all over the country and all over the world. And it amazes me. Like, I have clients in Australia, in the UK, India, women who I never would have met otherwise, because the whole good or for bad social media and using Zoom to connect has created this connection that probably before COVID felt not as normal. But there's something incredibly special about me getting to hug someone in person after walking alongside them through some of their hardest moments in their life. So that was very much a special moment for me, because when that happens, you realize that connections are real friendships, real belonging. And I think every woman deserves to experience connection like that in her life. And one of my most favorite moments from the weekend was looking around during Friday night's foundation event. That was the night we did the yoga and the meditation and the sound bath. And there was mats spread across the room, and women just slowly started to trickle in, and just this connection just started. And there was this like bond. The minute you sat down on that mat, like it was just, pick open seating, pick your mat. And there was just easy conversations that started. And I just remember thinking, so many women came here hoping they'd feel less alone. And here they are, realizing they never were alone. And to me, that is so powerful. So if Mother's Day weekend felt hard for you, I want you to consider maybe joining us next year. Not because your entire life depends on one weekend, but because there's something really healing about spending a weekend that has been so hard for you with women who understand this part of your story, and women who remind you that your life is still expansive. Your life is meaningful and connected and full of possibilities. So if that sounds like interest to you, I'll make sure to remember to drop a waitlist link for next year. The Others Day celebrations are happening in Chicago, May 7th and 8th. And I really want women who maybe found themselves waiting to say yes to this year, say yes next year. If you're on the wait list, as the details unfold throughout the year, you will hear everything first. And maybe next year, instead of spending Mother's Day weekend trying to distract yourself from what's hurting, you'll spend it surrounded by women reminding you of everything that is still possible in your life. That is my wish for you. And if this episode brought up any emotions for you and you're recognizing how long you've been carrying this alone, and you're ready to stop feeling like life is happening everywhere except where you are, let me know. Reach out to me. You can schedule a Thrive call. It is a free 45-minute call. I help women work through not just what grief looks like, but helping you figure out how you can put a plan together to reconnect with yourself, with your relationships, with your future, and a life so you can feel proud of who you are, even if motherhood didn't happen. You deserve to feel fully connected to this life of yours. And I want that for any woman who leaves this journey without a child and leaves this journey without a roadmap of how to move forward. So I hope you have a beautiful week. I love you. And remember that it's never too late to discover your meaning. I'll talk to you next week. Hey, real quick, I just wanted to tell you about an awesome resource I created. If you have ever found yourself in conversations with people, or maybe people offering you suggestions about what you should do to become a mom, it's called the Top 27 Things People Say When You're Childless and How to Respond. You can get your copy free at lanamanikowski.com/things people say.